Hello everyone, and welcome to the High Tech Legion channel. This is Paul, and we'll be taking a look at the Corsair Air 540 case. Now, some things about this that you might notice that are a little bit different. It's a lot wider. It is shorter. It's a mid-tower case. So basically this is designed to maximize airflow. So you literally have two sides here. You have one side where your CPU and everything is going to go on, your fans or your water cooler, etc. And then on this side here, this is actually behind the motherboard tray, which we'll get to in a few minutes. And this is where your peripherals like your DVD drives and your hard drives are going to go. So it makes for a kind of odd looking case, but it does serve a purpose because you have no other components in front of your motherboard impeding any airflow across your motherboard, etc. So we'll go ahead and take a quick look at it, and then after I'm done, we will literally show you what it looks like with a build inside. Front of the case, you're going to see it has the Corsair logo here. You have a reset button here. This is your power button. Of course, that's your hard drive display light. You have your jacks for your headphones, and you have two USB ports. You also have room for two 5¼ inch, either a bay or a couple DVD drives. Now the top does come off, and I will show you how that comes off in a second. So let's go ahead and look at the side panel. This does have a side panel window on it. All right, now we have the side panel window. The side panel window is a full-size window, so you can see inside the case right now. I do have the plastic on it. It has two screws in the back to take the panel off. They come off pretty quickly, pretty easily. The panel does come off. Flip that around to give you an idea on what that looked like. And now we'll actually take a little bit of a quicker look on the inside. If you remember, I said that all the components are in the back, just the motherboard and what you need up front for your motherboard, your heat sink, etc. is going to be up front for maximum airflow. As you can see, there's a lot of room inside this case. We have no hard drive cages impeding anything here. All right, let's take a look at the back now. Looking at the back, remember, we're talking about maximizing airflow. You have a lot of airflow that could come through here. You can, if you wanted to, put a couple fans. This is where your power supply is going to go on this side. Now remember, this is all behind the motherboard tray. We have a lot of expansion slots. You got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 expansion slots, 140 millimeter fan, and some more grating for airflow. Now, this piece up here does come off, and we'll get to that in a second, and I'll show you what that does. But now let's take a look at the opposite side so we can look at the motherboard tray. This is the non-windowed side, or let's call it the working side of this case, because this is where all the other components are going to go, including your hard drives, your SATA drives, etc. So of course, take that off. It's a full panel, very light. Put it down, and then we'll get a quicker look at this. As you can see, power supply is going to go here. We do have SSDs. This, of course, is your 5¼ inch bay. We have all the connectors for the case in the back. So as you can see, the back of the motherboard. This is all the room that you have here, so this should be very good for cable routing purposes. Now we'll take a look at the top of the case, because that is where the water, if you're using a water cooler, a self-contained water cooler, or even a closed loop, this is where you're going to put your radiator, whichever part of the United States you come from and what you want to call it. This is literally the top of the case here. There are two screws here. So when you take out these two screws, it's going to release the grating, and now you can see where you can put your radiator, whichever you want to call it. And the reason why I say this is because I'm sick and tired of people at our YouTube channel telling us what it's called. Because depending on where in the United States you grew up, or North America, you call it different things because that's what you grew up with. So remember, don't hate, just accommodate. All right, so as we can see, there is enough room for a nice large rad here. All right, so let me turn this around without shutting anything off, because the next thing that we could look at is actually the front. Now, when we come to the front, as you can see, there are going to be two 140 millimeter fans, and then you have the your I'll get it out. Hold on. There we go. Then you have your screen in front. It is a magnetic screen. As you can see, two 140 millimeter fans. You can move these up a little bit if you want. You can change them. You also have room for a radiator here. So if you wanted to take these off and put your rad up front, not a problem. This is why it's called the Air 540. It's a very versatile case. It's going to give you the options to make changes how you want without impeding airflow coming across the front of your motherboard, the front of your video card, the front of your heatsink, etc. So let's actually take a closer look on the inside. Of course, this is your motherboard tray. You have some nice rubber grommets here for cable routing. So you're going to be able to hide your cables, and you're going to have very good cable routing capabilities here. Now, of course, some of us, as like me, are still using regular size hard drives for data, etc. And we're using SSDs for our games or our OS. So down on the bottom here, you literally have two bays for hard drives, 5 1/4. And in the back, and I'll show you in a second, you can literally just stick them right here. It has two SATA port connectors for you. So you got your power, you got your cable, no cables running through, everything's going to be covered. So if you're like me and you hate to have wires showing, this is a godsend. Now, I'll try to give you a side view here. I must be on something. All right, there we go. All right, we have another 140 millimeter fan here in the back. Of course, I showed you the two up front. Now we'll go ahead and flip it around, and I'll show you the back side. Now that we're looking at the back side of the motherboard tray, you have a nice amount of space for cables. So if you have extra cables that need to be laid on the bottom of the case, you've got it. Your power supply, of course, goes here. It will go this way. It will go out towards the center or towards the front. And then, of course, you have up here, you have a removable SSD tray. All you have to do is just hit that tab, lift it up, it comes out. This gives you the opportunity to use 4 SSDs. Not bad. Okay. If you remember, I showed you the 2 SATA connectors that led towards the front. They are connected via these wires. Of course, you're going to have to power these wires, but they are connected back here. So basically, it's plug and play. Hot swap it. You know, if you need to hot swap it on via your motherboard, plug it into your motherboard. You can make them hot swappable. You can put them in, take them out anytime you want. Down here, we have a couple screws which hold this bracket. This bracket is basically for the size of your power supply. So the larger your power supply, you can take these 2 screws out, and you can move it back literally up to here is the last screw. Here are your connectors for your case, your USB 3, your HD audio, and of course, your power switches. So literally, it's a nice design, and my whole reason for wanting to review this case, not only because it's a lot smaller and it's kind of a little bit different looking, I want to see how well it cools. I mean, we do have some great cooling on the opposite side here. And of course, look at this. I mean, if you can't mount a heat sink from this side, you got a problem, because this cutout is great. But in any case, as I said, we got some great airflow through the front, but there looks like there's no airflow through the back. So what I'm going to do is I'm definitely going to test both sides with my IR to see what the temperatures are on each side and to see if maybe the back end here might be a little bit warmer and does need a fan to cool it. Now that we've gone through and installed all the components, I'll talk a little bit about my feelings on a few different things. In the grand scheme of things, based on the case design, it was a fairly easy install. Unfortunately, the case design also hinders the install. I had a little problem getting cables through, and the reason why is because I'm so used to having a case where the motherboard plate is all the way at the end, so you could kind of see when you're on one side pushing a cable through and being able to grab it from the other side to plug it in. In this case, I could not do that. I had to put it through one of the grommets or through the bottom cutout and then walk to the other side of the case and literally plug it in because I couldn't get my arms around each side to see where I was going. But other than that, again, it was a fairly simple install in the grand scheme of things. So we're going to go ahead and head over to the actual right side of the case. If you're looking at it straight out, this is where the cable management, etc., takes place. Now let's call this the working side of the case. And as you can see, there is a lot of room back there. I'm going to start out from the bottom and show you the the power supply and the hard drive cage. As you can see, the power supply is mounted. It's mounted vertically. Then on top of that is the hard drive cage for the SSDs. I do have an SSD in there. I do not have it plugged in at this time. If we look at the motherboard plate or the cutout for the motherboard, you can see that you can easily fit a heatsink in the back. You don't need to remove the motherboard in order to do that. And then, of course, there is your optical drive as I have put in. We can see the rubber grommets towards the top and what I have through those rubber grommets. And then if we go down towards the bottom, we're going to see the cable management system. Now, I did strap off some of those cables, so they are fairly set on the bottom. But as we can see, everything goes through the grommets or through the bottom hole towards the front. So there is a lot of room back there. And believe it or not, we do get some decent airflow through the back. Although it's not actively cooled, there is enough cooling to where it does keep the back part of the case fairly cool. Now looking at the, I guess let's call this the component side or the actual brain side of the case, you can see there's a lot of room to work with above the heatsink and the motherboard. You can barely see any of the cables that are coming through. I mean, of course, you're going to see your PCIe cable, but in any case, this is a 7970 video card. And if you look at it, there's way more than enough room because this is a larger video card. It's the Asus DirectCU2 7970. So it's a fairly large video card. It's a 3-slot video card. And you can see that has enough room. Now on the bottom, I have my 2 data drives. Of course, what will be hooked up is the SSD for my OS, and let's go ahead and turn this puppy on so you can hear a little bit of it. It's not that quiet, but it's not that loud. So once we got everything working here in working order, you can see the fans in the front. Now remember, you could fit a single rad, a dual rad, or a triple rad in here. When I say triple rad, I mean a 360 rad. So, and that's in the front. Of course, you could fit a regular single rad in the back, and then up on the top, you could also fit up to a 360 rad. But as you can see, there's a lot of airflow coming through this case. Nothing is impeding any of the airflow towards the CPU or the heatsink fan. So we'll go ahead and show you the benchmarks in a second here, and I'll give you my final thoughts. Now that you've seen the case, let's talk about it a little bit. Do I like the Air 540 from Corsair, the Carbide series? Yes, I do. It is a versatile case. It gives you the option to keep, your heat producing heatsink on the opposite side. You can keep your SSDs on the opposite side, so you have a lot of airflow going across the motherboard, since there's no impedance whatsoever across the face of the motherboard right to the the heatsink and the fans, or even if it was a water cooler, you're still going to have some air that's going to cut across it. What I don't like about it is they didn't think, when they put the connectors from the case, from the front panel of the case, the cables are very short, and unless you either go through a grommet or have a USB 3.0 connector that's on top of the motherboard, which technically isn't an Intel standard. It's something that the other motherboard manufacturers are doing. Intel usually puts their USB 3.0 headers on the bottom. You're not going to be able to plug in your front USB 3.0 connectors. So that's one bad thing. I mean, it was really short. I couldn't even get it to the bottom of the board, through the bottom and to the bottom of the board to connect it. So what I ended up having to do was change out the original motherboard that I had in there and go to a different motherboard that actually had a USB 3.0 connector that was up by the 24-pin connector and not at the bottom of the motherboard. Was it easy to install the components? Hey, there's a hell of a lot of room in there. I'm not going to say it wasn't easy to install the components. The wiring was the pain in the neck. Even though it has the great big grommets and everything like that, and you could get everything through no problem, which was very easy, I found myself going from side to side on the case because I couldn't see when I brought something through in order to plug it into where I needed it. So I'm on this side, then I'm walking over and going to this side. Now, of course, we should know that that's probably going to happen based on the design of the case. You've got about 4 inches on the one side, and of course on the motherboard side you got 9 inches, or is it 8 inches? But in any case, so that was another thing that made it a little bit harder to get everything put together after I actually installed the components. Component installation was great. It was wiring that was the headache. So does that make the case bad? No. You have to remember, when you're buying a case of this fashion, this is what you're going to get. The other thing that I don't like, and of course it's called the Air, so we know it's going to have a lot of airflow coming through it, the case is quite loud. Right now I'm using a Fantex air cooler in my build. And I've got, of course, the two 140s in the front, and I've got the 140 in the back. The two 140s in the front do make a lot of noise. I do have it on basically normal setting, not on a silent setting. So even on a normal setting inside the case, especially because there's a lot of, it's made for airflow, so you have a lot of venting in it, the case is pretty loud. I would have thought that maybe it should have been a little bit quieter, especially on normal or even a silent mode. You could kind of hear the fans clicking, and it's not coming from my Fantex heatsink. So that's a couple things that I didn't like. Overall, the case is light. I mean, even with my build in there, I'm probably saying it might be about 33 pounds. I mean, the case by itself, you can lift it up with 2 fingers, literally. So it's not bad, heaviness-wise. Is it a unique design? Yeah, I think it's a unique design. It's a little bit wider than most cases that we're used to, but it is shorter height-wise, and it is a little bit shorter depth-wise. But if you saw my build, I could also fit in a full-sized video card, which is a larger video card, the 7970 by Asus, that's 3-slot, with no problem. and there was still about 2 to 2.5 inches between that card and the fan, so if there was something a little bit bigger, I'd be able to fit it in. But in any case, we're going to go ahead and give this a silver, and the reason why I'm giving it a silver is because of course, the few things that I saw. I didn't like the noise that it was making. I thought they could have done a better job with the fans. Does the case cool very well? Yes, it does cool well. But I still don't want noise. When it's louder than my other computer that I got 9 fans in, that's pretty loud. So for the noise, for the unthoughtfulness about the wiring inside, off the front panel of the case, with the wires being too short, I thought that was a great impedance, especially for those of you who might have USB 3.0 headers on the bottom. Do I recommend this case? If you want to save a little bit of space and you want to have some good airflow and you don't mind the wind noise or the fan noise, go ahead and get the case because it is versatile, and believe it or not, I think that it has given me the opportunity to take a case and get it off the floor and actually put it on a shelf, because this actually fits on one of my shelves. So, again, thank you for visiting our channel. Make sure you visit us at hightechlegion.com, www.hightechlegion.com, for the full review, the written review of this. Hey, go ahead and subscribe down there and make sure you click like on this video. Visit us at Twitter with twitter.com/hightechlegion. Also, Facebook. You can like us on Facebook, facebook.com/HTL reviews. Stay thirsty, my friends, with over 1,000 videos. If you haven't seen it at High Tech Legion, you might not have seen it at all. Bye-bye.